All right. It looks like we have landed, and we will wait until someone makes contact, and then we will get the show on the road. Laura's in the house. Yay!
Oh, happy birthday, Laura.
It was Laura's birthday on Monday. Can you believe she's 55? Doesn't she look amazing for 55?
She's just a gorgeous human.
Contact.
I don't
We will.
I don't think
get
that
the show on the road. Laura's in the house. Is that coming from you? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I don't. So, little QL languaging lesson. Yeah. I'm not a fan of the doesn't so and so look good.
I agree.
That's such a disempowering program. Laura's just gorgeous.
She's gorgeous.
How many sunspins she's had is irrelevant. She'll always be
gorgeous. I agree.
We need to really move beyond that program that age is somehow chips away at our beauty.
I agree. I'm in agreement with you. Whenever I take her to work, though, people will ask me, what is she, 35, 38, or you know what I mean? So she's doing good, yes. But no, I agree with you. The languaging around all that stuff is even I am guilty of it sometimes. I'm not feeling very good tonight, so I am not super sharp. But I picked up this weird little it's kind of a strange cold. It's like a cold light that flares at moments while I was in Fort Worth over the weekend working. So anyway, but I'm here and we're going to do it. And there's already 20 people in the room. So let's get this one going.
Thanks for showing up for us.
Absolutely. Right. And usually when I don't feel good, we get all excited, and by the end I'm fine. So I'm just counting on that. And
that's happening. Totally.
And that's what we're doing. So, it's been one of those weird weeks since we last spoke, where there was kind of simultaneously nothing and a lot of stuff. There was a few huge big things at the end of last week. And then the last few days, YouTube has been super duper boring. Right? There's been nothing, but those things last week were full of nonsense to be dissected. So we're here to dissect the nonsense. Where would we like to begin?
I feel like I was the boss of where we began last week.
Okay. I just have to let you know, we got rave reviews on our bagel fight. So I changed it. I changed it from Blame Trump to Bagel Fight because people just really enjoyed that. So we know where our talent lies, really. You know what I mean? Okay. All right. So let's start with, well, I guess we can kind of move in a sort of chronologically type of order. That seems like probably the best way to sort of go about it. So let's start with that Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson that posted, I think last week, last Wednesday, right after or maybe it was Thursday, but whatever it was. And that they jumped right into the alien UFO narrative op. You wanted this clip. So, do you want me to just play the beginning of it? Because they didn't waste 1 second. They were just aliens.
Correct. No, yeah, I think it's really important to play from the second they start.
Okay.
And this was my best actor in a fake UFO disclosure psyop is a tie, is a two-way tie.
All right, here we go.
Fair use.
Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Did you see the U.S. government just released, apparently by accident, the Project Aqua stuff? Did you see this?
No. What's that?
This is crazy.
Yeah, I guess we're rolling.
Are we rolling?
Yeah.
No. You can. This is just someone just sent me this. This is
Project Aqua.
The person sending him that didn't just send him that so that he would immediately open his appearance on Joe Rogan, getting everybody to go look for this probably fake file.
Well, also, how did he get in his seat? How did he enter the building and get in the seat and not have any other interaction with Joe? And then it was oh, I just got this thing. Are we rolling? He literally just got the text in that exact moment. If
Right.
that's what we're supposed to believe, then I would think as a journalist, he would have wanted to vet it,
Right.
right?
Right.
But he,
That's my point, right? Like it was clearly like, here's your opening line, go, right?
Correct.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, hold on. They just released, I think by accident,
How does that happen?
it's Kona Blue. You familiar with this?
No.
Kona Blue is it was a program that, yeah, dude, I'm going to send this to Homeland Security, just released this.
Send it to me. I'll send it to Jamie.
And, no, I got it right here. I'll just, I don't do email or what, I don't know how to airdrop anything.
You don't do email?
No. I haven't done email in many years.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you exist?
I do text.
I admire him.
Wow. Just text?
why?
Yeah, I don't do email. I don't go on the fucking.
Because he doesn't do email.
Wait, you go back because I want to hear the whole thing because it's so like we're a minute 19 in, and the extent of disbelief they're inviting us to suspend is so over the top. It's already been over the top with their little performative play, but this part that Tucker says is cuckoo. Just go back like 4 seconds.
TV. I'm not into that. No, I got it right here. I'll just. I don't do email or what. I don't know how to airdrop anything.
You don't do email?
No. I haven't done email in many years.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you exist?
I do text.
Wow. Just text?
Yeah, I don't do email. I don't go on the fucking internet. I don't have a TV. I'm not into that. But anyway.
I don't go on the fucking internet. I don't do email. I tried so hard, Emily. I'm like, don't be a bitch, Dani. Let's give Tucker the benefit of the doubt. And I played it out in my mind a bunch of different ways. I'm like, well, maybe he just has a bunch of assistants who do all his emailing for him. Maybe he has a bunch of assistants who do all his research for him. But if he's getting classified documents from his government informant on text, you think he's not going online to do any fact checking as an actual journalist? I don't understand how we're supposed to believe that Tucker doesn't go on the internet. Help. Please help me.
Well, my guess would be multiple things are true at once. He probably does have people who go out and fish stories and then just either send him links and he doesn't have to go searching around, or literally, like, have you ever, it's been like a really long time since I watched Alex Jones, right? But back in the day, he would have every article he wanted to talk about printed just on 8x11 white paper, and he would read from it, on the show. So it is possible that that's what's happening here, is that somebody does all the internet scouring for him and delivers him things to go through. But the way he just clicked on something on his phone, if somebody sent him an article, it's linked to something, and as soon as he clicks on the link, he is then on the internet. So it's not an accurate statement to say I don't go on the internet.
Well, he also says later in the interview, oh yeah, I was watching this video on YouTube. Oh yeah, I saw this. So he forgot the story that launched us into this. But I feel like in terms of this is all we need at this point. I don't know if our audience needs to hear the fake disclosure that he's about to give.
Right.
But I feel like it's, he's letting us know from the get-go, everything you're about to hear is dubious. And you cannot trust what I'm about to say, because we're starting with the most ridiculous lie that I'm expecting you to sign on to.
Yeah, I mean, this is really where the art of sort of, and when I say this, I don't mean the co-opted term that's become popular in the last few years about misinformation, disinformation, malinformation. This is the art of sort of disinformation or confusion campaigns or whatever it is, because in this interview, it's 3 hours long, there are a few very important truths sandwiched in with a bunch of, propaganda and write out lies. And the overarching thing, and this goes to something else that I was listening to a few minutes of today from our Dark Horse friends. That I'm watching this slow incremental inching forward of like the widening of the margins that we talk about, right? Like, okay, like the where we had the margins before, the people have grown tired of that, or they've outgrown that, so we need to widen them a little bit. This is the new accepted story that we've approved to do that, and these are the lines. This is sort of like the track you have to follow with that story, right? Like I saw Brett today, or I guess the show posted yesterday or the day before. I meant to listen to it, I forgot. I went back and started today. He has someone on who's questioning polio, right? Who's someone who's
saw this.
Yeah, someone who's not a scientist, who's a true dark horse, but uses terminology that Brett likes, and whatever. Like, you don't claim to have theories, you claim to have hypotheses. It's very important to tell the distinction between them, blah blah blah. But basically, this is the response to, the no virus argument is starting to gain some traction in areas that it used to sort of be blockaded from entering. So we need to start questioning the nature of some of these mind control campaigns we've done around diseases, viruses, vaccines, or whatever in the past, and start questioning those so that the people we have pushing the current bullshit can be seen as credible by those who like a little questioning from their experts, right? And I'm watching, like, I knew as soon as I turned it on what it would be, but I'm shocked. I mean, I've only listened to probably a half an hour so far, but like, we're talking like just the tiniest sliding of the margin, right? Like so tiny. But then, there's always, he has the ability to now say, well, what are you talking about? Like, I've done a show questioning polio, so of course I'm open to these ideas, or whatever it is. Like, meanwhile, it was, less than 30 minutes in, he's already getting mad about the Koch's postulates and the isolating the virus thing, and, all of that kind of crap, right? So that's what this is. It's like, let's put out a bunch of stories that we've decided are now acceptable to talk about. So no one can say we don't talk about them. Let's talk about them as stupidly as possible, or within these accepted sort of guardrails around them. And then, that takes care of controlling the conversation for the next 3 or 4 weeks until we have to widen the margins yet another millimeter. It's just like the slow roll to nowhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I saw a piece of that interview, since we're already mentioning it, where the guy told Brett that he doesn't believe in the efficacy of any vaccines whatsoever, and he kept apologizing. Like, I'm sorry, Brett, but I don't. But under what auspices was this guy brought on to Brett's show in the first place if he's not a scientist?
Right. Right. And maybe the point, if you watch the whole thing, I'm only less than a half an hour in, so I haven't gotten to that point, right? But maybe where it goes is, see, I've allowed some questioning, but this is why we can't have experts who aren't scientists, because they end at the place we're not allowed to go. Questioning is fine, but we still have to have experts dictating. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. So sticking with the Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan interview, this is a clip from Breaking Points that highlights a clip from.
Are we staying with the UFO section?
Oh, do you want? Did you want to continue? I thought you said you didn't want to continue.
No. But I'm just asking if your clip is specifically addressing the UFO disclosure in this interview.
No, you had said you wanted me to just pull the beginning part of that interview for that. So the clip I have is for something else within.
Yeah, no, I want to stay here.
Okay.
Because, this is important. So I'm wondering if you have, and I have another clip on it.
Okay.
Do you have anything you want to share about their disclosure? The clip is not going to be from this show.
No, I don't. I like, yeah, like
We don't have to screen share this show.
okay, got it. Yeah,
Okay.
no,
So, what I want the audience, just to catch the audience up to speed as to why we're talking about this, is that the false alien disclosure, they've been seeding the groundwork for this for quite a long time. Chris Mellon is one of the players, Lou Elizondo is one of the players, David Grush is one of the players. We hear Eric Weinstein talking about these people. And that is what, so my sense of this was like, oh, they just flipped the switch, right? Like we've all been waiting. They pulled COVID. Like, okay, when are you going to do the false alien disclosure so that you can lock down the whole world, you know, because it's an existential risk and we're going to need a one world government to deal with this new global existential risk. So I saw this as like, oh, they're turning up the dial on that op. Was that your take on this as well?
I mean, I mean, I'm not saying that isn't what's happening, but like to me at this point, whenever like all of these people who forever had no interest in talking about that or suddenly talking about it, like my brain just sort of turns off and stops listening because I'm like really not interested in what they have to say about it, right? So, but I just was like, what world are we in when like Mr. Bowtie, his opening line is aliens, right? Like, you know, it's like we've come into this really weird sort of space and place. And, you know, what's sad is that we're watching, I mean, I don't know if this is sad or not, but like, you know, there's obviously serious shifting of positions and some kind of arc or evolution going on, right? But so rarely does it land on like what's actually happening. It just is like a more entertaining form of misinformation or propaganda than the one they used to tout or believe, right? And so like that's the whole, like I don't know if we're getting farther from the truth or closer. Like, I don't know if the inch by inch, row by row, I'm not sure which direction it's leading, right? Like, there's this idea that, okay, even if it's incremental, it's getting closer because at least they're discussing it. But like, the way they're discussing it is so cartoonish that they may as well be going in the opposite direction from, right?
Agreed. No, I think it's totally taking us in the opposite direction to distract. And because I do watch Dark Journalists on the regular, I know you have your own issues with him. He's tracking this very closely. So if you wouldn't mind next pulling that up.
Yep.
And so we can intro it around 8:12.
I got it pulled right 8:06 right here. Here we go.
Okay, great.
To the heart of one of the things I want to mention about all this, which is when you get into the UFO file, there's a great deal that can be done without the government, without CIA people telling you. And this is one of the big disgraces that went on this week, which was the Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan interview. And, you know, they were talking about a lot of things and freewheeling, which is always a good thing. But, you know, all the people that they cited as their sources, you know, Gary Nolan, decade in the CIA, all programs for the CIA, good friend of Anthony Fauci, high-fiving Fauci, saying, you know, what an established, incredible, distinguished career. So, you know, do you want Fauci in charge of your UFO disclosure? I don't think so. So that's Nolan. And then they brought in Chris Mellon, who, you know, was controlling the whistleblowers. And that goes into the documents that were released. Now, a big major FOIA document dump through the Black Vault and John Greenwald, putting those documents out just in the last 24 hours. This is remarkable because it shows a great deal of that control by Mellon. And it also shows places where Grush went on the record and was not being honest about his interactions with this government group named Arrow, which is the UFO Defense Office. And it shows that the CIA wanted to keep the upper hand on what they were doing there. And Mellon running interference all the way for his boy there, David Grush. And, you know, just puppeteering that situation as we've put on the record. Now, we have our own history with that, which, you know, I've exposed ATIP and TTS.
Now, I pulled up Gary Nolan's Wikipedia. He's a Stanford MIT guy, which we could go to in a second. But if you could just jump ahead to 1220.
People are. So when we get into situations where people like Rogan and Tucker are talking and they're citing them, as a matter of fact, at a certain point, when they're talking about the Kona Blue stuff, Tucker starts reading his phone and a text from Elizondo saying, you know, these documents are real and, you know, I was right in the heart of it and all this stuff. And he's like, my source in the DOD, you know, going to Elizondo. I mean, if that's who you're using as your source, these are counterintelligence people. They've worked for decades with the CIA. Those people are never going to give you the truth. And there you are spilling it out to millions of people. You know, go for the real sources. So one of the great things that you could say that has been demonstrated by us pulling out the whole blue.
Okay, that's it. I just wanted to kind of give that piece of analysis on what they were sharing. And I don't know if we have to go too deep into David Grush or these people, but Dark Journalist has been for years, plural, naming all these guys as CIA ops as part of false disclosure. And these are the guys who Tucker and Joe were referencing during their big whatever.
I mean, in all of these things, the only people who ever get to the point of like wide name recognition are like these types of people, right? And so, you know, within like there's like some pretty weird alien and UFO rabbit holes on the internet, right? And especially there were more back 10 or 15 years ago, you know, before the internet became a Potemkin village. And like that's a rabbit hole that Randy spent a lot of time in. And I have never been super interested in the UFO alien thing, not because I think that there's nothing like that, but because most of the ways the stories were told that get told widely, like that just didn't resonate to me in the same way when there's like something I really should pay attention to, because there's this level of weirdness that to me is the evidence that it's real. Because whenever I've had any of these edge experiences or anomalous kind of things, there's a strange eeriness to it that has a resonance that even if it's like on a completely different topic, like let's say it was like a Bigfoot thing or a ghost thing, which is not my thing either, I can tell the difference between the stories that have that resonance and the other ones that are like primed to go in a Happy Meal at McDonald's, right? And none of the people who have these wide recognition or are quoted by mainstream or sub-mainstream, and in a lot of cases even sub-mainstream, are ever that. Randy had some guests back in the day that like I would never have sought these people out on my own, but it was fascinating listening to them. And I could pick up what they were putting down because the details that went along with the story resonated with my understanding of how these kinds of oddities actually occur. Right. And so that's like, it always just feels like the most cartoonish, most clown show nonsense is the stuff that gets talked about. But the bigger thing for me is like, even people who like are smart enough to know that that's all bullshit, like in whatever, I still don't understand why they want disclosure. Like when you have an anomalous experience, you don't need someone else to come along and tell you what the experience was and what it means, right? Like you observed it with your own two eyes, and then it's sort of on you to try and dig into things and sort of figure out, you know, what matches the parameters of the experience. And it's not like there's a one answer, a cover-all answer for all of this stuff that we all have to agree upon, right? So this idea that the government that people don't trust about anything else, you're going to trust them to tell you something about that is stupid to me. And the amount of calories that are wasted on like this whole thing, like it makes very little to no sense to me. Like less than that, actually, like negative sense, right? And so I like whenever I hear the word disclosure, I'm just like, it's almost like sleep now, right?
I mean, I'm similar to your, like, I don't care about the larger
care.
UFO disclosure alien conversation on any level. What I've learned from dark journalists throughout the years that I do think is interesting is how much the CIA and government psyops have to do with suppressing the truth of that. And as you and I are talking about more and more, the truth of this reality being like the number one thing that they go the distance to keep from us. So that's my interest in it in an ancillary way, is like how many other distortions are being taken on. Like, just look at the JFK file. You know, so many people say that whole thing is sealed shut because of UFO alien disclosure, and same with Antarctica, right? I'm more interested in like the places we're not supposed to look, we're not supposed to go, because it seems like this is a through line behind that. But I don't think any disclosure being talked about now by Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, or Eric Weinstein has anything to do with
it has
what's
nothing
really
to
happening.
do with it. Yeah, right. Like somebody, I was in the comment section of like a video. I forget which video it was, but somebody had posted. It was like one of these types of, I can't remember if it was like an alien thing or whatever it was, but somebody put in the comment section, like, the only secret the CIA has that's real is that the world itself is not real, right? That like this whole thing is a gigantic illusion, right? But I mean, the thing to me, like with all of this kind of stuff, is these are all nature of reality issues, right? This has to do with the temporal and dimensional and spatial proportions of the sort of sacred geometry of the space and time around us that is enfolded in this way that sort of, if you understand it, then all of these things that seem far away in either space or time, or even just in progress, suddenly you realize they're like right here if you just sort of understand how to vibrate with them, or like how to do the steps to sort of get in that. You know, I think we were closer when we were kids and it was like the magic password or the 3 little dance steps or something like that. And we've gotten like very far away from it. We're like into every document, reading every book and this, that, and the other thing, where it's if we had just stood in the
Might have
circle.
been onto it when she went like this. I think she was opening up a portal.
Yeah, right. That was the disclosure right there. Because we used to do that stuff when we were little. We would like do a little this and then step our foot through the pretend window and into the magic universe. And like, I think we were like eons closer then than we are now, right?
Yes,
so
agreed.
Yeah. So anyway, but you know, there's like, I do appreciate some of the things that he talks about, dark journalists, when it comes to like steganography and some more like sort of occult science kind of issues.
Yeah.
Right. But some of the way he presents his material feels like it's adding more layers to the cake of the op here, right? Like in terms of, you know, like not everything is in the UFO file. Right? Like, like it's almost like there's just this one file, and if we could see it, we would understand everything. And like, I think that keeps people in that disclosure hunt instead of like, I don't know, you got 2 eyes, 2 ears, and like an entire body that measures things, right? Like kind of embark on the pursuit out there yourself, right? Like all you have to do, all you have to do is go to Joshua Tree on a clear night, and you don't need any information from the government.
Right.
That's all I'm saying, dude. Right? So, anywho, but it's weird. Like once you have the experience, then you're trying to prove the experience. You need everyone to know that you had the experience and to second your thing. And like, what is that need that humans have for that? I don't necessarily have that, but it's a human desire that most people have.
Okay, so I'm going to answer your question in a second, but I'm just curious. Have you never had that? Or is it something that you outgrew?
I think I didn't have it. And then people told me I had to have it. So I tried that on for a size for a while. And then I was like, yeah, these pants are too tight, not doing this.
Yeah. So I think it's how we've been indoctrinated to believe. I mean, this is what my new book and like the bulk of my work is about. But we've been indoctrinated to buy into the weaponized definition of authority that tells us authority is an external agency that gives us permission to do things, instead of understanding that authority is our God-given right to write our stories however we please. So when you look at how many generations have been indoctrinated into this, like blatantly erroneous definition of authority, you have a race of people who are constantly reaching outside of themselves, ourselves. I include myself in this because I'm still, reprogramming myself out of it, but for validation, for acknowledgement, for permission, for all of those things. I think it comes down to the weaponization of the word authority.
I couldn't agree more.
We should end it there because we
I
agree.
know, right? I don't have one issue with that, right? And then there's this other thing, like, let's forget about authority for a second, right? Like you have an experience and then you have this person standing next to you, right? Or whatever, or you go home and you tell your brother or your mom and you try and show them they don't have any further authority on that topic than you do. But somehow if you can convince them, you feel more sure of your own self, which also doesn't make sense. Right? Like this weird, so it isn't just like the top down type of authority, but it's also this like power in numbers. Like somehow what I know to be true is more true if I can convince other people that it's true too. And this keeps us like constantly outside of ourselves this way and also this way in terms of like, and it just, to me, it reeks of a very deep disbelief in our own power of like observation, deduction, knowing, all of that kind of stuff. And the belief in authority, for sure. It's the most dangerous superstition. Just ask Larkin Rose, right?
And the belief in authority, I just want to be clear, it, like, yes, on one level it has to do with authority, but it also has to do with our self-esteem deficiency collectively.
Totally.
Because that indoctrination has made it so that we don't trust ourselves. Yep. We don't believe our own lived experiences. We defer to a television telling us what our lived experience is, even when it's completely different. So it goes, I mean, yes, it starts with authority, but it just goes to like this sense of self being so weak and flimsy and underdeveloped.
100, yeah. The second agreement in 45 seconds.
This is a rough. I love it when you're sick.
Right. I don't have the energy to argue. No, I would agree with that under any circumstances. Okay. So let's move on to this other Tucker Carlson clip. But this is from a clip from Breaking Points. And we will watch the clip of Tucker and Joe and then listen to a few seconds of maybe that of the Breaking Points. But to me, this was probably, there was a few very important moments in there. And I think he had some like revelatory moments in terms of saying like, yes, I used to believe this stupid thing. And I think those arcs are on some level sort of real, and then they've been dressed up and all of this other stuff.
But they might be real, but they're also deliberately like gussied up and made bigger because, as we learned in our interview with Mickey, that like there's nothing the public loves more than a story of evolution. So I think those were deliberately like if we beat it out, like if we created the beats, there would be a symmetry in where those were inserted into the conversation.
That, and also I'm 100% certain that there was many others auditioning for the role that he's now playing. So all of the years in the media doing all the things he did before were part of like leading to this moment where he's the one selected to be the rogue from the corporate media, that all this kind of stuff. And so even if those arcs were true for him, right, those were the ones that they decided had made him better to carry this torch that's also going to be full of a lot of other stuff forward. But then the other thing, and this goes for, I was having this thought about Brett too when I was listening to that other thing earlier, like it's always too little too late. It's too slow, right? So like it's lovely that you changed your mind, but it's like irrelevant by the time that you changed your mind. Correct. It's always so far in the past that nothing can be done. There's never any like, I guess one could say that he's taken a few bold stances on Ukraine at a time that it actually mattered, right? But for the most part, all of these things are 10, 15, 20 years in the past. And it's great that you can be honest that you were an asshole about it and not just wrong, but also an asshole. But it doesn't actually like help the way it would help, like, you know, if we were moving a little quicker. Okay, so here's what I think was probably one of the most important moments in the podcast, that all the people who love UFOs probably didn't even care about this part, because like they're just happy that their itch got scratched. But here we go.
Listen,
If you hear someone talk that's saying something that's kind of horseshit, it resonates with you that's what you've seen.
You had a
horseshit
moment
before.
with Barry Weiss on your show that went everywhere. I saw a clip of it. I never saw the show itself, but she was going on about, so she was posing as one thing, and then you pressed her. You're like, well, hold on a second. What do you mean by that? You just attacked somebody. And she had no idea what she was talking about. And it became really clear to me watching it. That completely changed my view of Barry Weiss forever. I was like, oh, she's a fraud, actually. This person's not honest at all. Like, she has a very specific agenda. That's all she cares about. The rest of this stuff is just is a kind of sleight of hand maneuver.
You're talking about the thing with Tulsi Gabbard?
That's correct.
Yeah, she called her a toady, and she didn't know what that meant.
Well, but she had no idea. Like, Tulsi Gabbard had straight outside the lines on some Syria or something. And Barry Weiss was, going through the files in her head, like, what does she have to believe? And she was aware that, Tulsi Gabbard had somehow violated that in a way that no one's willing to say, like, in detail to fully articulate. What did Tulsi Gabbard do wrong? No one will tell you. She's just bad.
But I think
it's important to be honest about what your agenda is.
I think she is honest. I think she is honest, and I really like her.
Yeah.
I like talking
I'm not
to her.
Against,
She's a very intelligent
not
person.
against her personally.
I just think that was a mistake. And I think you're allowed to do that and hopefully learn.
Shilling so hard for her.
He's shilling so hard, but his eyes are closed the whole time. He cannot look Tucker. Notice how long he's either been looking down or his eyes are closed. He cannot even make eye contact while he's defending her.
Yep.
From that.
If your agenda is neocon politics, which is her agenda, just say so. Don't pretend to be a defender of free speech as a principle, which is what she does.
How is she a defender of neocon politics?
Barry Weiss?
Yeah, like what specifically?
That moment with the shock on his face was a totally organic moment.
Well, anyone, including me and Tulsi Gabbard, who thinks that America shouldn't be funding wars that don't help America, she will attack.
Yeah, I mean, that's empirically true. I'm on Barry's feed literally. And listen, I have nothing personal against Barry Weiss. We've only ever been cordial. This is purely a professional disagreement. Let's put all that out there. But I'm on Barry's feed, and everything is about individual students getting attacked for example, headline at the Free Press, I was stabbed in the eye at Yale because I am a Jew. And then I continue to scroll past, and I see multiple retweets of like a panic going on, anti-free speech that's happening at Columbia University. If I continue to scroll and look at the Free Press, I see articles that are justifying more aid to Ukraine, more aid to Israel. But really what gave away the game to me, and this is actually just pure 100% proof, is that Barry did an event in Israel with a guy named Natan Sharansky. Now, most of you probably don't know who that is. Sharansky is an Israeli politician and a father of neoconservative ideology. His book was chiefly responsible for George W. Bush's second inaugural address and the freedom agenda about spreading democracy to Iraq. So if you are doing an event with the father of the freedom agenda from Iraq, you are a neocon, 100%. And she did that unironically in Israel. And then also while there was posting videos like, this is what it's like to be under attack, while we're in Israel. People were like, yeah, what about a couple miles away over there in Gaza? Like, I'm not just...
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I haven't fully kept track of Barry Weiss's entire record, and I thought like her full dedication was to Israel. I didn't, right? And I was like, oh, maybe it's Israel, not the neocon agenda in general. But I've done a little listening and looking since I first watched that the other day, and it does seem like there's never a war that she's not really for. But they're all generally wars that on some level affect sort of that part of the world and all come from those same think tanks, right? And so I thought Tucker Carlson's point there was excellent. I thought Joe looked like a fool. This is, Barry, what Tucker doesn't know enough of, because he doesn't spend as much time on the internet as you or I do, is that Barry Weiss is also heading up a project called the University of Austin that is making its name as a free speech university that has an entirely tech bro, the PayPal mafia pro Israel version of free speech as the entire staff, right? Like I don't see anyone on there. Like you'd think they could at least make the token questioner, right? The 1 millimeter outside the margin questioner on the staff, right? So she literally has the biggest Substack. Her Substack is bigger than anyone else's. She has the biggest Substack called the Free Press, right? And then she has this new University of Austin. And all of this is built on the idea of defending liberalism and free speech. Meanwhile, Tucker is right. Her heart and soul are in neocon politics, particularly, focused on defense of Israel as perfectly saintly, and anyone who opposes that as some horned anti-Semite.
So a couple things. One, this has come up between you and me before. And this is my own ignorance because I tend to shy away from labels. So what is the definition of a neocon?
So the neoconservative movement is basically what Sagar just laid out right there, right? And it was that idea that was then sort of absorbed by Project for the New American Century think tank. Yep. And they started, lobbying and creating groups and policies and whatever that promoted this idea basically of invading the Middle East under the idea that we're going to spread democracy, right? So war in the name of democracy, but not the democracy that those people choose, only the democracy that they approve of.
Right, that we impose upon
Correct.
others.
Yeah.
And is it specifically wars in the Middle East?
It's basically it's mostly been wars in the Middle East. But it's definitely the Ukraine thing is sort of part of that. They've definitely branched out. It could be we could say it's part of some of the things that have happened in South America and maybe a few of the things that have happened in Africa or whatever. But that's really where it started, was there in the Middle East, right? And it's this idea of America should be the authority around the world, but we won't call it authoritarianism, we'll call it democracy,
right?
Type of thing. It's our democracy, not democracy as people generally think of it, that our democracy, right?
Correct. Oh, and that's interesting because that is what our democracy really means. We
Correct.
will impose our democracy upon you. So
it's like the Carlin thing. It's a big club and you ain't in it, right? It's that type of, yeah.
Correct. So I don't follow Barry that regularly to know what she's going on about. I did just look up, I know she wrote How to Fight Anti-Semitism in September of 2019.
Right.
So I know she's been hung up on the Jew thing for quite a while. This to me seemed my guess is this is an alley-oop setup for the slam dunk that's coming a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because I don't know why Tucker would care enough to even utter Barry Weiss's name. As far as I know, Joe interviewed her one time and she was very unimpressive.
Multiple times. She's been on multiple times.
Oh, she has been on multiple times.
Yeah.
But
I think the reason he finds her particularly offensive is because of okay, so you can say one thing about Ben Shapiro, that he's free speech except for Israel, right? And everybody knows it. It's obvious. Nobody is snowed by this. But Barry Weiss has, because she's posed as more liberal, right? She's gay and she worked at the New York Times and
her big stink about leaving the New York Times and the big letter she wrote.
So she would say
I didn't know she was gay though.
She's gay and so she can do that. She's I'm not a neocon, I'm gay. Neocons don't like gay people or whatever it is. But
this is where the label thing gets weird.
Correct. Meanwhile, everything she promotes is just like the exact same thing that like Dick Cheney or PNAC would promote, except for with a gay pride parade, right?
Got
It's like
it.
the
The rainbow.
pinkwashing kind of thing, right? So she has always been viewed as like a leftist, right? Partially because of her lifestyle. People get much more distracted with that she is in a relationship with a woman than paying attention to the words she actually says.
Right.
But then when it got too woke so she has credibility with the left. And then when it got too woke, the next pose was for her to go over and get credibility with this new, like, more people who were starting to question the left and maybe either move a little bit to the right or creating a coalition with people from the right in defense of free speech. And so she spoke out, she did her dark intellectual dark web article, and then she did this huge leaving of the New York Times. She goes and starts the Free Press. She's made tons and tons of money, way more money than she ever made at the New York Times, posing as the greatest defender of free speech who walked away from the New York Times, right, in order to defend free speech. And as part of that, she made amends about having tried to cancel college professors who she opposed back when she was a student. She realized that, oh, I realized this canceling is wrong and whatever it is. But meanwhile, right now, you can find on all of her social media posts that she's doing the same thing now that she supposedly atoned for that she had done in college. And she'd asked forgiveness, saying, I was like a young person, I didn't know better. But now she's doing the same thing. And every time she's ever done it, she might attack people who aren't on board with the broad thing of neocon policies, but she only ever calls for cancellation when it has to do with Israel.
Interesting. Well, I mean, she seems, it's a pattern, her, Dave Rubin, but I get why it's bigger with her because of the whole New York Times stink, because she is a legit journalist. I wish I'd tapped into more of her Joe Rogans because I was so unimpressed by the one that I saw.
So boring. She's
that
so
I was like,
boring.
this person should never be on camera. And then what was weird about this was, okay, so this was set up, gives Joe a chance to defend her, and then with his eyes down the whole time, and then Tucker caved and was like, oh, I made a mistake. Thank you for enlightening me. And then even at the end of the conversation, he kind of circles back to it. So let's just pay attention because I think that's setting up something else.
Well, I felt like when he said Barry's a nice person, he kind of was like, well, maybe I'm being, maybe I'm wrong here. But he did come back and say, when I see someone do this, this makes me know, like he kind of did come back to his original point. But it'll be interesting, to see if Barry Weiss comes on soon, right? Because that sometimes happens, like the right type of thing. Yeah. But it is, the other thing is like maybe that was like his real moment. Like, I'm willing to go along with all this other bullshit, but like I get to say like my one thing that like he fucking hates Barry Weiss, right? Like that kind of thing. But I thought it was a good that moment with Joe of looking down, right? And here's the thing: you can like Barry Weiss and say, yeah, she's fucking like she's cuckoo on Israel, right? Like that one issue she can't see, like she can't keep her moral. We all have some issues somewhere inside of the feather orb. Just went up this time instead of down or to the side, right? We all have some issue, however small, where like, for a nostalgic reason or for some thing inside of ourselves that we haven't grown up about or overcome yet or whatever, we sort of have this like weird little exception, even if we don't acknowledge it to ourselves or others. Everyone has that. So just say that. I love Barry. She's like wrong about this kind of thing, but we are friends. She could have said that, right? And or he could have just said, she should acknowledge that. She should just say that like Israel is the one issue that I have no wiggle room in my opinion on, but I'm open on anything else, and just be honest about that. This is the one thing I'm not open to changing my mind about, like period, right? That's what Tucker's issue is. Like Tucker says he knows other neocons. He doesn't care. Like he doesn't stop him from being friends with them because they admit that they're neocons. They don't pretend that they're not. And she pretends that she's a liberal who defends free speech right? When really she's just, you know, a Zionist talking point walking around pretending to be all these other things.
100%. And because Joe didn't acknowledge what's happening now, he just kept the conversation as he looked down to the toady Assad thing. Was that an initiation for Joe? Like, did he just get points with the lizards for that? Did he just pass the test? Or, you know, like, I'm wondering what the incentive system is around that. But that whole thing seemed weird.
Yeah, it was weird. Okay, so the other thing on that similar topic for right now, there was a huge debate between, so Dave Smith and Cenk Uygur were on the sort of pro-Palestine or anti-Israel side, and Dennis Prager and Batya Ungar-Sargon were on the pro-Israel side. And like, it was a reasonable debate, you know what I mean? Like, it was, we all know this. I wasn't informed by this, but for people who like didn't pay attention to this, you know, until a few months ago, like whatever it was entertaining enough and it had reasonable flow and whatever it is. But the takeaway for me, like, forget any of the like the facts or the points or the information. Dennis Prager is like some very strange, just like Zionist genocide bot. Like, it was fucking weird. Like, he has like a monologue that he always says that he doesn't sway from, that is so ridiculous. One side wants peace and the other side wants to exterminate all the Jews all over the world. Like, it's not even in touch with like any version of reality, right? And like it was so it sounded so robotic and cold. It was like, it was, I mean, I've heard him say all of this stuff before, but this, he was saying it with such little feeling or passion this time. It's like, oh my, like, this is like Joe's DMT story, right? Like, it was just like running on autoplay. Like, you never watched Westworld, but like when when they need to be sent back into the base to be reprogrammed, like they'll start straying, something will start glitching and they'll start like repeating something or like saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. It was almost like someone needs to send him back down into the base for a tune-up to like add a little bit of like something to it. So it was really weird, right? It was just like, if someone were to go into Chat GPT and type in, create a robot that, you know, like monomaniacally and monotonally just chants Zionist talking points or whatever, then it was really bizarre.
I know you sent that one to me, but honestly, and
don't watch it. Don't watch it.
I don't care about this. Is such a giant distraction. Like, I just don't care. My publicist booked me on a show, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, to talk about how the phrase anti-Semitism is being misused and weaponized in the Israel conversation. So the host just kind of gave me the floor, like, tell us about this. And I gave him my perspective. And he went to like level 1,000 and started screaming at me, all caps, what are you, pro-Palestinian? You call yourself a communications coach? You're clearly terrible at your job. You suck. I mean, he was just like going off. And I was like, you know what, sir? I'm a guest on your show. If there's any way we could just like tone this down. Don't tell me how to do my show. I mean, it was like psycho. So that whole conversation is so weaponized. Like, it's
so weaponized. It's like
crazy.
I don't know that there's any truth to get to in this conversation other than observing behavior of people and like not forgetting that as we move forward, because right, like, there's people who are betraying their, you know, secret here with just the way that they're acting or the way that they're dancing around this situation or whatever. That's all you can do is like analyze the behavior of the people to see if they're consistent, because we don't like everything could be a fucking lie, but you can assess whether someone is authentic and genuine in the way they're communicating to the best of their ability, who they are, what they think, and what they know to be true or not, right? And that's it. And that was just like one of the most disturbing things I'd ever seen, was watching him do that.
Yeah,
right?
it's such an like the thing with this particular op, I guess Fovid was similar, was seeing the people who are caught up in it like make such asses of themselves and behave in such like undignified ways
Undignified.
publicly.
Yeah.
It's also cringe.
That's exactly like I was uncomfortable for him listening to him. I'm like, he's somebody's father, he's somebody's son, and he's up there doing that. Like, ooh, right?
Yes, it's like the entire Biden presidency.
With less ice cream. Right? With less ice cream. Okay. Did you have I think
Why some Israel? While we're on Israel?
Yeah, go for your no agenda clips. I'm getting a little congested and tired, so let's do those and then we'll skip the article I brought or whatever.
Okay. I'm finding the piece. So what I'm about to share is a clip from a guy named Michael Hudson. Have you heard of him?
I don't think so.
Michael Hudson is an economist. He's an economy professor, and he was consulting with the Hudson Institute. Have you heard of the Hudson Institute?
No.
So the Hudson Institute, I'm just going to share, you know what? I'm just going to do, hang on. I know you're not feeling well, so I'm doing my best.
No, I'm okay. Let's do it and then I'll do my article because it's short.
Okay. So screen sharing.
Oh, let me give you that. I'm sorry, I forgot to give it to you. Here we go. You got it.
Cool. Let me try again. It's disabled.
I just gave it.
I know it was enabled and then
so
it got
weird.
disabled again.
Okay, try again.
Okay. Share screen. It's working.
Very good.
Okay. So can you see this? I don't know why. Can you see?
I just see you. I see your beautiful. Now I see it.
Okay. So this is Herman Kahn, who's referenced, and he was the head of this Hudson Institute.
Okay.
He's an American physicist, founding member, regarded one of the preeminent futurists. So I'm pre-promoting our next show.
Okay.
Where we're going to go into the futurists. But so Hudson Institute is the key. And as long as we have screen share, you guys can just see this instead of watching us listen. God bless the way they do their clips so that they're so easy to grab. Okay. So this is who he is, just so we could get, it's only a minute 13, just so you understand his background.
50 years ago, in
Can you hear?
1974, I was working with the Hudson Institute with Herman Kahn, and my colleagues there were a number of Mossad agents who were being trained. Uzi Arad was there, and he became the head of Mossad and is currently the main advisor to Benjamin Netanyahu. So all of what is happening today was discussed 50 years ago, not only with the Israelis, but with many of the US defense people, because I was with the Hudson Institute, which was a national security agency, because I'd written Superimperialism, and I was a balance of payments expert. And the Defense Department used my book, Superimperialism, not as an expose, but a how to do it book. And they brought me there as a specialist in the balance of payments. Herman brought me back and forth to the White House to meet with cabinet members and to discuss the balance of payments. He also brought me to the War College and to the...
Okay, we get the basic gist of who he is and where he's coming from. So here we go. I know this is not anything new for us, but this is a straight from the horse's mouth situation.
I could see that the intention from the very beginning was to get rid of the Palestinians and indeed to use Israel as the basis for US control of Near Eastern oil. That was the constant discussion of that. From the American point of view, it was Israel as a part of the oil. So Herman's analysis was on systems analysis. You define the overall aim, and then you work backward.
Notice systems analysis. So I am wondering when SFI is going to come into this, and I'm going to show you something in a second, but I just want to give you one more piece.
For the United States, what they wanted was the oil reserves in the Middle East. And again and again, I heard the phrase, "You're our landed aircraft carrier" in Israel. Uzi Arad, the future Mossad head, would be very uncomfortable at this because he wanted Israel to be run by the Israelis, but they realized that for Israel to get by with the money that it needed for its balance of payments, it had to be in a partnership with the United States. So what you're seeing today isn't simply the work of one man, of Benjamin Netanyahu. It's the work of the team that President Biden has put together. It's the team of Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, Blinken, and the whole deep state, the whole Neocon group behind them, Victoria Nuland and everyone. They're all self-proclaimed Zionists. And they've gone over this plan for essentially America's domination of the Near East for decade after decade.
Okay, so I'd recommend to if you're interested, check this out. It's the most recent No Agenda, and everything he says is pretty much gold. So you could find this on their page. But I did look up, I just kind of was curious. So I did a search on Lifeboat Foundation. And what came up when I typed in this guy Herman Kahn, was this.
Of course.
And I thought it was so interesting.
Existential risk.
Right? Given what you and I are talking about, and check out the notes. It references Bostrom. Right? So we'll spend some time, I'll spend some time going down these rabbit holes because it feeds into everything else that you and I are researching.
So what Dani, go ahead.
That was it.
So what Dani is referencing is part one of our most recent podcast that posted last Thursday titled Existential Risk versus Meta Crisis. And so you guys can go check that out. If you haven't joined us at wordspodcast.locals.com yet, go do that. Promo code, all one word in capital letters, welcome to Words, and that and so much more is there. And tomorrow, Thursday, today's Wednesday, Thursday. Part 2 of that episode will be available as well. So go check that out. And everything seems to, to lead back to like really one or two spots always. And those two, if it's ever two, then there's always a portal between the two. So, right.
Yeah.
But
I wasn't even looking for that. But then it was like, oh, here's that other op we're talking about.
So when you asked me about the neocon politics before, like that segment about, the whole point was always to use Israel as a base to control the oil in the Middle East. And this is why the neocon project really started over there, because at that time, oil was still the future of energy. And part of the reason the neocon project has branched out to so many other places now is because now rare earth minerals and other stuff are part of the goods that they are after now. So it's always the same thing. Something we want is under the ground, right? And so we must go over there to impose democracy because that's the only way to extract rare earth stuff from underneath, right? Makes perfect sense.
Totally.
Okay. So then the last little bit go ahead.
Just while we're finishing this up, can you share the still text?
Yes.
Because it was just too topical to not include. So what Emily is sharing with us is a screen grab of a chunk of the Fourth Reich. Yes, I am the world's slowest reader. That I felt was super pertinent to this.
Fourth Reich is a book by Jim Mars, everybody.
Yeah. So do you want to read this part? Do you want me to do
Sure.
it?
I will do it.
Cool.
The deal was made and Rockefeller delivered. On November 29th, 1947, the UN General Assembly approved a resolution recommending the partition of Palestine. The vote shocked the Arab world, which had not foreseen several Latin American countries switching their vote at the last minute. The Jews had traded silence for their new country's security, but they didn't take it lying down. To this day, Israeli leaders have in turn blackmailed the Western employers of Nazi refugees and war criminals, guaranteeing nearly unconditional support for Israel and its policies. The creation of Israel also explained the inability of U.S. officials to interdict the flight capital out of Germany. Yeah, I mean, just this idea that, like, you know, groups of people not from the area can decide what's going to be done with land in an area, right? I mean, this is the whole crux of the entire matter. And it's still, like, today I was listening to Benjamin Netanyahu speak out about the horrible anti-Semitism that's going on college campuses and what it threatens and whatever. Like, this conflation of Jewish people with the state of Israel, like, in general, Jewish people have been some of the most successful people living some of the most comfortable lives throughout the world. There's, like, I've never, with the exception of, like, you ridiculous neo-Nazis or whatever, right? Like, I've never heard anybody suggesting that Jewish people don't have a right to exist. This whole question is about the state of Israel, and what you're seeing right here. Like, you know, there's no, if the creation of the state of Israel was really a response to what happened in Germany, why didn't they partition Germany? Those people were already there. Why didn't they create out of Germany or somewhere in Poland or somewhere around there? Like, that would make sense, like, right? But this is something completely different. And every time you hear any conflation of anti-Semitism with anything having to do with Israel, you're listening to the op, because Jewish people existed long before the state of Israel as we know it, and they will exist long after. And they are some of the most successful, comfortable people in most of the world, right? And so it's all nonsense. But yes, yeah. Okay. What am I? All right. So the last thing was just this article that I, when I was reading, I've completely lost track of where I am. Okay. When I was reading the news last night before I went to bed, I found this article from LouRockwell.com by Mike Whitney. And it was kind of going over how Trump basically sold out his base with this whole, with his sort of partnership with Mike Johnson here, right? Because Trump came out and said basically he stands with Speaker Mike Johnson, and that Mike Johnson is doing a very good job, right? And there's all of this stuff here, including a lot of tweets from Michael Tracy and a speech from Marjorie Taylor Greene and a bunch of other people, where they're detailing this weird scenario where, like, Trump was fine with this bill so long as, like, a very small portion of the aid that went to Ukraine got changed from a grant to a loan, but it's a loan that he can forgive right after it's like some very weird, convoluted kind of thing, right? But he warned Marjorie Taylor Greene not to speak out against Mike Johnson. And the craziest part about all of this, right, is that he's not criticizing Mike Johnson for the FISA vote that basically expanded the permissions of the same people that have been going after him with 91 fucking charges, right? And, you know, if there's, you know, there's a lot of stuff to read in here, like, but, you know, you guys can go find the article. I'll link it when I go in and fix the post after the live stream is over. But, you know, like, this delusion that, like, Trump is gonna drain the swamp really this time, or that Trump is, you know, better, like, if I can't think of anything really much worse than, like, the last week's display by Mike Johnson, and Trump is in support of that. And so I know that most of our people are completely outside of this conversation at this point. But I know there's some people who still get excited and feel like they want to vote and that they, whatever. If you are into Trump for any other reason than the humor of it, like I'd be concerned at this point because of stuff like that, right? It was really weird. It was like this whole thing about this like small amount. Trump wanted to make sure that the part of the money that was going to go to pay like the pensions of the bureaucrats in Ukraine doesn't go as a grant, but as a loan. And it goes as a loan that can be forgiven, but not until after the election. Like that was his only concern. And as soon as Mike Johnson changed it to that, then Trump supported that bill. So when he, a few months back or a few weeks back, when he told them to kill the bill because there wasn't like enough border funding in it, like that was all like it wasn't about what people thought it was about. It was this part that he wanted carved out.
Why is Trump weighing in on the bill? He's not an elected leader.
Because when the last time that Mike Johnson tried to bring this bill to the floor, Trump like told his people and posted out in the social media that this was a terrible, terrible bill and no one should support it. So in order for, Mike Johnson has been a MAGA person in the past. Mm-hmm. So part of getting this through was, making sure Trump didn't call in the cavalry around it so that they could pass it. Right. And mm-hmm. So what's weird is like from most people would think that like, when Trump told them not to vote for the last one, is because, he posed like he was against the entirety of the whole thing. Why are we spending money on all this other stuff and not on Americans and whatever? But all it took was them changing this weird language around grant to loan and after the election. And suddenly like I support Mike Johnson on this and he's doing a very good job. It's all
was that quote taken? Like, I'm curious. Was there more to the quote in the Lou Rockwell article? Was there more context for it?
So there's a lot. There's a lot of quotes in here. There's some editorializing, and then there's like a bunch of quotes from a variety of different people. The most interesting thing was the speech that was quoted from Marjorie Taylor Greene. It seems like really Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie are the only ones who stayed relatively principled on any significant level through this. Yep. And each of them I have heard say, like a lot of people want to say, oh, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is pro-Israel. I heard her on an interview where she said while she is pro-Israel, she would consider it reasonable that we shouldn't fund them, right? Like, and Thomas Massie has basically said the same thing. But there's a bunch of quotes here, but the most interesting stuff was kind of by Michael Tracy, because he doesn't have a dog in the fight. He doesn't care about Trump. He's not a Republican, right? Here's the background I'll read you the parts that Tracy wrote. Okay. Mission accomplished. It is done. Donald Trump and the House GOP just completed one of the most epic swindles in political history.
We have to stop, because even just the way that sentence starts makes it seem like Donald Trump is the elected leader of the United States. Like Donald Trump has no power to be working with the House GOP. This to me sounds like Trump's abortion ban. I'm just saying.
What I'm saying, like what you're saying is correct, but it is also true that Donald Trump has a lot of sway over a lot of people who have to answer to their bases. And if he says something is okay, then they can go ahead and do it, and they're not going to hear about it or get voted out the next time or whatever it is, because people like get real excited about Trump without paying attention to some of the things he actually does, right? But technically, he's supposed to have no power, but so is Barack Obama is also not supposed to have any power. And
right.
George Soros is not supposed to have any power. That doesn't mean that they don't. It is done. Donald Trump and the House GOP just completed one of the most epic swindles in political history, with Trump personally effectuating the largest ever disbursement of Ukraine funding through his emissary, MAGA Mike Johnson, as Trump lovingly calls him. The $61 billion passed this afternoon is likely to underwrite the brutal, pointless trench warfare for at least another year or two. This after the same old endless media screeching that Trump and MAGA Republicans were being brainwashed by Putin and would never fund Ukraine. that fundamental hoax continues, only this time Trump was in on it, right? And then there's some there's a response from someone else who said that Trump could have at any point killed this monstrous bill if he wanted to, but he didn't. He even let MAGA Mike go.
I slip into another dimension in which Trump is the president. I'm not understanding the framing on any of this, that he could have killed the bill.
Like, so that, because he did before, like, that's that like when this came up, like I don't, it's somewhere between 4 and 8 weeks back, right? Trump went on Truth Social and basically said, to all the MAGA, there's a group in Congress that is like MAGA associated people and all of that kind of stuff. He basically announced that this bill was awful and they should kill it, right? So this could all be performative, right? But this is not me saying that Trump should have that power.
No,
this
I
is
understand.
right. But like at the last time, the bill was moving through the House and then Trump did his thing. And then a lot of people who were supporting it pulled their support. And so people got upset that, for the same reason you're talking about, that this person who supposedly has no power is still seemingly controlling the way that he's not, they're wanting to do a corrupt thing and they're complaining that he's stopping them from doing a corrupt thing. And so this time he did not do that. Right. And there was this weird, and he did come out and say publicly, Mike Johnson is doing a great job. Right. And we should support him. And he did tell Marjorie Greene not to vote to oust him, not to do the vacate speakership.
Okay.
Right. So my point with all of this is nonsense. Like that, right. Like the whole thing is nonsensical, but I know that there are still people in our midst who do get a little excited about Donald Trump. And if it's for any reason other than like humor, right, then, like he's not against this stuff. Right. He just if it's his idea, it's a good idea. If it's not his idea, it's a bad idea. That's pretty much, pretty much how he rolls. Okay, let's go to the chat room and see if anyone has anything. If you have questions, comments, things that you want responded to, all capital letters right now. All right, let's see what people are saying here. Thor says he loves that we're the most dangerous Jews or half Jews in America.
Full. I'm full.
She's full. I'm only half. I'm sure that doesn't surprise anyone. Yeah. Lindsey Graham is in the closet. I agree. Light in the loafers, Lindsay. That's right. Let's see. All right. So the friends are just chattering amongst themselves, and my head hurts too much to read the tiny print. So, here. Thank you, Grateful Dogs. Yes, I picked up some nasty little thing, dude. It happened again. My cocktail job took me literally right to the hotel where all the gymnasts were staying for the NC2A championships. I'll tell the full story in the dump on Friday, but remember how last time I stepped out of my hotel room and I bumped into Tommy Paul,
yes.
Right? Guess who I stepped out of the elevator and bumped into this time?
I don't know.
Mary Lou Retton.
Shut the fuck up.
No.
What?
Totally, right?
Did you talk to her?
I did. Well, I mean, she's been really sick because she had that whole like weird pneumonia COVID thing and she didn't have insurance. Remember that whole story from like 9 months ago? So it's been a lot. She has like a breathing tube under her nose. So she bumped into me and I looked down, literally looked down. I looked down and I was like, oh my God, that's bad. I'm surprised I recognized her because she looked pretty sick. And I just looked at her. I was like, oh my God. I was like, how are you? She's like, it's been really rough. I was like, well, like, I'm wishing you, like much love to you, dear. I wish you well. And she was like, thank you. And she put her arm around me and gave me a hug. Like she really appreciated that I asked her how she was. Right. So she would like, so she was staying in my hotel, and then the hotel that was right next door, like I was working at a festival and our bar was right outside of the Renaissance Hotel. And that's where LSU, Stanford, Cal, and Utah, Utah were staying, right? And LSU ended up winning, right? But we were going back and forth to the hotel to like go to the bathroom, do like eating meals and things like that. So I was in and amongst the LSU people the whole time, and LSU ended up winning their first national championship, right? Mary Lou Retton's daughter used to be, she's graduated, but she was on the LSU team. So Mary Lou Retton was there to support LSU. So it is weird that I find myself like amongst the people and bumping into the people that sort of end up winning, but I'll tell the full story, which is a little bit more, has a little bit more to it in the dump on Friday. But it is fucking weird, right? Like I knew the gymnastics was going to be in Fort Worth, but the arena was 10 miles away from where the festival was. So I didn't think they would be right there.
Yeah.
But I found myself right there amongst all the gymnasts and bumping into Mary Lou. So it really lends to this idea that like maybe there's only a few thousand people in the world.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anywho. All right, I'm going to check back. Anyone do anything in all capital letters? Nope, just to get well. Emily, I appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in, guys. We'll be back next week. Go check out last week's portion, and the new portion will be up tomorrow of our regular Words podcast, wordspodcast.locals.com. We will see you next week.